everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Dylan here. We have a major update today from Todd Blanche, U.S. Attorney General, that you do not want to miss. He just came out and exposed the truth and revealed everything going on right now that you do not want to miss. So many of you have messaged me saying that your investments are up thousands of dollars. We are now running a 90% off sale on the Invest Like Trump program. The link is below, or you can type in thefinanceZone.org. And when you sign up, you will get up to $1,000 in bonus stocks inside the program. Okay, my friends, let's tune in to Todd Blanche. Here we go, guys.
So joining us now, newly confirmed U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We'll try to get to some of those legal issues, but first I want to play something the president said about you Friday. He's clearly a big fan. Here's what he said.
He's got a shot at being the greatest ever. If he remains tough and strong, he'll never change. Are you going to change your ways? I don't think so. If he doesn't change his ways, he's going to go down as the best.
So, you know, this is what critics say. You were his personal attorney. You guys have been through the trenches and a lot of things, but now you're the attorney general. So how will you break with the president if you see things legally differently than he does?
I mean, the president loves disagreement, he wants to get counsel from all of his leaders. That is just that, counsel. It doesn't mean you're just saying yes to him. And what he and I share the exact same goals for this country. When it comes to the Department of Justice, it's restoring the rule of law to this country, combating crime, and that's what we saw. We were in Long Island together, celebrating, really, and we have a lot more work to do, but celebrating the most historic drop in violent crime since they started keeping the stat. And so we have a lot of good things happening at the Department of Justice, and I'm excited to really get going over the next several months and continuing to do the job.
And you feel like you'll be able to tell him no if your legal analysis disagrees with where he wants you to go?
I think he would expect me to tell him no. It's not whether I feel like I could. I think that the president, there's a misnomer about President Trump, which is that he calls me up, wakes up in the morning, calls me up and says, you know, Todd, go prosecute this. That's absolutely not the case.
A lot of people, a lot of the fake news like to think that Trump is, you know, calling all the shots and everything. Trump hires these people to actually do their job, you know. He hires people like him. He also hires people like you know, Mike Johnson. He also calls on people like the guy who's leading the deportations. You know, these people. It's like Trump's not out there making these arrests. You know, he hires these people to do their job.
President Trump, and he truths about this, he talks to the American people about this. He wants a Department of Justice, he wants law enforcement out there arresting bad guys and making, you know, clean, like we did in D.C., like we've done in Memphis, where we're really cleaning up the streets and making our communities safe, letting our kids go to school without fear, letting folks go to restaurants without worrying about getting mugged. And so he and I share the same vision for this country. And if he and I have disagreements, or if there's something that he has questions about legally, that it's my job to talk to him about those issues, which I have done for many years and I will continue to do.
Okay, let's talk about one of the hurdles you had to get past, not only with Democrats, but with Republicans, to get to where you are now, officially confirmed. It had to do with this anti-weaponization fund. All of this stemming from a settlement over an IRS contractor leaking the president's tax records. You have said that fund is no more. It's going away. But there are objections from Democrats who don't believe it's actually dead. Here is Senator Adam Schiff.
He refused to put that in writing. He refused to put that under oath. And of course, that raises profound questions, given what we already know, and that is they have used Justice Department funds to pay off the president's cronies.
Is there any scenario in which that particular fund survives? There are legal challenges as well, I know, still pending on that. Any scenario in which it comes back? Or what do you say to Democrats who say, well, there are other funds and other measures within DOJ you're using to do the same thing?
No, I mean, the fund is dead, or whatever word you want to use. It never started. So it's not as if the fund is coming back. The fund never started. And Senator Schiff is not being honest. He's not being honest with the American people, and he knows it. So he knows that I have said under oath. He knows.
When has Adam Schiff ever been truly genuine? Comment below. Do you guys trust Adam Schiff, or do you guys trust Todd Blanche? I want to hear your true opinion below.
He knows that I have put it in writing. He knows that I have said publicly, repeatedly, President Trump said during the cabinet meeting that he understood it was dead. Now, here's the difference between this rhetoric around the fund and the truth. The truth of the matter is President Trump has said for many years that he believes that the Justice Department was weaponized against a lot of Americans, not just January 6ers, but a lot of Americans that had the Justice Department used against them, and it really hurt them financially. He's talked about that on the campaign trail and up to this very recently. He will not stop saying that. And guess what? I agree with him. The Department of Justice over the last several years was weaponized against some people, but we are not using the anti-weaponization fund to compensate it to the extent that anybody in this country feels that a tort has been committed against them by the government, they can sue, and that's what Democrats said all along. They said, why can't you just let anybody sue the way the law allows, and that's what we're doing.
What about the contours of protection for the president, his sons, and the Trump organization with respect to IRS audits? Can you clarify what remains intact from that?
So, and by the way, let's not forget the reason for this lawsuit is that the president, his family, multiple people within the Trump organization had their tax records literally just shared with a lot of people and used against them. And so that's a horrible wrong that was committed against the president and many others. And by the way, nobody gets a dime. He did not get a dime. His kids don't get a dime. The Trump org does not get a dime from this settlement. But what we did do, and what remains the case, is that any existing audits, are no longer. Now, that doesn't mean moving forward, there's no protection. So anything that the president files or that Trump org files going forward, that has nothing to do with it. And it also is only for the people named in the plaintiffs named in the lawsuit.
Okay.
Again, a lot of rhetoric around that was I think used by Democrats to come after me and to come after the president, but that's different than what is actually true.
Okay, I want to get to executive privilege because there's a new Office of Legal Counsel opinion on this saying that conversations or communications between the president and private advisors under certain circumstances will be protected. Democrats, including Congressman Robert Garcia, say it's a smokescreen. Here's what he said.
Imagine now any investigation that Democrats are trying to move forward as subpoenas, Todd Blanche coming back and saying, actually, we're gonna say we're gonna use executive privilege and not release these documents. So this is about hiding corruption. It's about allowing the president to do whatever he wants to do.
He calls it illegal, unconstitutional. He says courts are going to strike it down.
Well, by the way, it is a new legal opinion that we issued, but it was just clarifying existing OLC opinions on this issue, and certain circumstances have to indeed exist. But we have to let a president feel like he can have frank conversations with individuals and get honest feedback about running this country without the risk of it being used by him and others, like what you just heard, in a way that's inappropriate. And so this wasn't any novel legal concept. This wasn't us pushing the law beyond where it already was. It's just saying, to make it crystal clear, as the Supreme Court has said, that a president has a right to have clear legal counsel from his advisors. And whether that advisor is getting paid by the federal government isn't the only condition that matters. So just because you're not getting paid, if you're providing the right type of advice, there are circumstances when it should absolutely be privileged. And this was not some new legal theory like some on the left are saying. It was just an expansion and kind of a clarification of existing legal concepts.
All right, speaking of the Supreme Court, you all now have an emergency petition there regarding construction on the White House ballroom complex. The 2-1 decision from the D.C. Circuit against you guys, the majority wrote, the two judges there, this ruling doesn't necessarily mean that defendants may not ultimately construct the ballroom. What it does mean is that the defendants may not do so during the district court's expeditious litigation without securing Congress's authorization as the Constitution and laws require. Why not just go to Congress?
Well, as we talked about, and as we just put in brief to the Supreme Court earlier this week, we don't believe we have to go to Congress. We believe Congress has already given us the authority to do what we're doing. Many presidents have done a tremendous amount of work to the White House, as they should, and Congress has authorized them to do so. And so we have a fundamental disagreement with those two judges, as we have told the Supreme Court earlier this week. And we'll see. The Supreme Court has briefing established that'll last over the next week or two, and we'll go from there. But President Trump has said for many months now, almost a year, that he has the authority to do this, and he said that because he absolutely does have the authority to do this, and we're hopeful that the Supreme Court recognizes that, and so that we can get the ballroom finished as soon as possible. Remember, yes, it is a ballroom, but it's also a meaningful upgrade and necessary part of the security of this city and the security of the president and his family. And so it's not just about a place for world leaders to come and have dinner. It's also about making sure the president, his family, guests, world leaders are safe when they're in this city.
Okay, before you go to, I want to ask you about Anthony Fauci. The Senate Homeland Security Committee on party lines sent over a referral to DOJ about potential contempt charges. Can you give us a timeline or idea on how that may play out?
We get referrals a lot, and so we did get the referral from the committee, and we're handling that case like as every American should expect, which is we're looking at it, and we're going to do everything we can. If it needs an investigation and it should be investigated, we will absolutely do that. We can't obviously comment. I know you're not asking me to on ongoing investigations, but yes, we did get the referral from the Senate.
Well, I've got a lot more here. We wish you could stay the full hour because there's a lot more to get.
Wow, that is powerful, guys. Now, President Trump just came out to address the nation. Let's listen in.
We have the highest stock market in the history of our country by far, every single month. That's another thing you should camp. They like to demean that. The Democrats, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's just, no. That means jobs, and it means 401ks.
I actually did listen to President Trump, and I did start investing in the stock market. And over the past year, my investments are up over $90,000. If you want to learn how to invest in the stock market, very beginner friendly, step-by-step and easy, you can go to theFinanceZone.org, or if you're watching this on your TV, you can just scan this QR code and get started in a couple of minutes. Even one of you guys messaged me saying that your investments are up over $13,000 after taking the program. And right now, we have a 90% off sale that ends today, up to $1,000 in bonus stocks inside the program. I go over which stocks that Trump has, which stocks that I'm buying, how to set up an account for the very first time, and I also go into depth about how to take advantage of this time we're in while Trump is still president. It's not too late. And look at this, Todd Blanche. This is a full new interview where he is actually coming out and exposing the truth about what's going on right now and his plans as the new Attorney General. So let's tune in, guys.
And joining me now is Attorney General Todd Blanche. Mr. Attorney General, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your being here in person. As we just heard in your address to the Justice Department staff this week, you said you and DOJ will, quote, uphold the law without fear or favor. You, of course, used to be President Trump's former personal defense attorney. Can you pledge that the Justice Department will always act independently of the White House?
Well, there's a big difference between saying we will always do our job and investigate any case and act independently of the White House. No, I'm not going to pledge that, and no Attorney General should ever pledge that. The President, if I were to pledge I will be independent of the White House, what that means is that if President Trump says, I want the Department of Justice to go after every violent criminal in this country, which is what he has said, what you're saying to me is I should say, no, sir, I'm not going to do it. So I will act with integrity. Our prosecutors will act with integrity. We will prosecute without fear or any sort of favor. And that's exactly what we've been doing, and that's what every Department of Justice should do.
Well, I guess big picture, if the president asks you to do something that you feel crosses an ethical or legal line, would you do it?
The president will never ask me to do something unethical or legal or illegal. He never has. He never will. And no, I swore to the Constitution of the United States, like every cabinet secretary has done, and like every attorney general before me has done. And so this narrative that's mostly pushed by the left and pushed by the media, that the president's going to pull me aside and ask me to do something illegal, is completely a false narrative, not true, will not happen, and hasn't happened.
Okay, let's delve into how you do see your tenure. You appeared with President Trump at the Nassau County Police Academy on Friday. You made some comments that did get a lot of attention. I want to play it, get your reaction on the other side. Take a look.
My administration and my Department of Justice, if anybody
touches a federal law enforcement officer in any way inappropriate, we will prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
And yet, Mr. Attorney General, on President Trump's first day in office, as you know, he pardoned everyone who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, including 172 people who pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers. How is that consistent with your pledge to always protect law enforcement?
There's nothing inconsistent about that. The president's pardon powers, any president's pardon powers, are not limited. So when I say, and when this Department of Justice says, and when the FBI says, like we're saying, and every U.S. attorney is saying, that if you assault law enforcement, we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law, that is absolutely what President Trump expects, absolutely what I expect of our prosecutors, and that's completely separate from any president's ability to pardon.
But he did the opposite of that effectively. I mean, on January 6th, police officers were beaten with baseball bats and flagpoles. Do you believe it was wrong to pardon the people who assaulted police officers on January 6th, given that you have vowed to protect law enforcement?
Every attorney general vows to protect law enforcement, including me. And so, no, I'm not opining or in any way saying what President Trump did is wrong. Absolutely not. By the way,
isn't it inconsistent with what you said, though? Is
absolutely
it inconsistent
not.
with your pledge?
No, there's a difference between saying we will prosecute anybody.
Whoa, this lady is like really digging into him, trying to do a little gotcha moment on Todd Blanche.
If later a president chooses to pardon that individual, that is the president's right under our Constitution. Do not forget that a few days before President Trump pardoned the individuals associated and who had pled guilty to the conduct on January 6th, President Biden pardoned hundreds and hundreds of criminals, many of whom were quite violent. So that's his right to do that, just like it's President Trump's right to do that.
But what message does it send to police officers that people who assaulted them were pardoned?
The message to police officers is consistent and same every single day, which is that we will protect you. And by the way, that's a little bit interesting coming from a place where we see violent protests breaking out all over the country, in New Jersey, in Minneapolis, in Seattle, in California. And instead of there being a full-throated defense by leadership on the Democrat side, on the Republican side, what you have is it's as if we're doing something wrong by saying we will protect law enforcement and we will prosecute those who assault law enforcement. We're not.
Let's, on this issue of January 6th, your confirmation was actually held up over the so-called anti-weaponization fund. I just want to remind folks what that means. That would have effectively paid people who felt they were in some ways wronged by the federal government and could have included people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. You signed a document. You testified under oath that the fund is dead. But President Trump has said he wishes it weren't. If the president asks you to revive the fund, will you tell him no?
Well, the president has said it's dead as well. So you can, and as the president has said that he very strongly believes that those that had this Department of Justice weaponized against them should be compensated, that he's going to continue to say that.
He said it's up to you. He was just asked about it. He said effectively it's up to you what to do about this.
So, and I've said repeatedly it's dead. And he has also said it's dead. He said it in a cabinet meeting with the press there. And so I think there's this, it might be enjoyable for the media to continually ask me about whether the fund is really dead. And there is no fund. No money went from the Treasury to any account. There were no commissioners established. And so there is no fund. There will be no fund. I've said it repeatedly. And the different angles coming almost every time I speak with the media, someone says, well, wait, is it really dead? And I say, yes, it is. And then the next interview I give, somebody will say to me, is it really dead? And I promise you I will say, yes, it is dead.
So you're saying you rule out ever reviving it, but just to be very clear, can you guarantee that under your Department of Justice, anyone who attacked the Capitol on January 6th will not receive one dime of taxpayer money if they file a claim against the federal government?
Wait, what? Why would they file a claim? Like, they're literally criminals, right?
Well, anybody can file a claim against the federal government, not just anybody associated with January 6th. I'm not going to sit here and say on a news program whether a litigation that may or may not happen will result in money. I can't do that. So what I will say is that there's a process in place for decades where somebody that believes they've been wronged or a tort's been committed against them by the federal government can seek redress. And I mean, beyond that, I'm not going to comment about hypotheticals of what will happen in any of those cases.
So potentially they could get paid under another stream of government government funding, but not the anti-weaponization
Well, I don't know
fund.
when you say they could get paid, what is their claim? Is it somebody
the
who pled
Justice
guilty?
Department's judgment fund.
No. So right, but when you say they could get paid, anybody who sues the federal government could get paid. It depends on the facts. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on what it's alleged the government did. And so I don't know the circumstances of any hypothetical case, and I'm not going to comment on a hypothetical case today. But there is a process in place where if you believe that you've had a tort committed against you by the government, whether it's slipping on ice outside of a federal post office or a law enforcement officer assaulting you, you are allowed to seek compensation.
Okay, let's talk about a case that was recently brought before the Justice Department. The DOJ dropped charges against the Olympic canoeist that it accused of vandalizing the reflecting pool on the National Mall, saying the damage was caused by, quote, botched installation and not vandalism. President Trump, though, said U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro was wrong and that she should revisit the case. Do you support Jeanine Pirro dropping the case, or do you support President Trump's calls to revive the case?
Yes, I absolutely support U.S. Attorney Pirro, as does President Trump. Now, that's different than whether the president is extraordinarily frustrated at what happened in that case, and I don't in any way fault him for that. And by the way, the filings didn't say that all of the damage was done by faulty construction. Okay, so that's where there's some, the media is getting some of the reporting wrong.
Well, it says the damage was done as a result of a botched installation and not vandalism as initially represented.
There was potential vandalism, and we know that there was vandalism because there's witnesses, that's also in the brief that you're citing, that there's witnesses that talked about the fact that there was vandalism.
What do you mean by potential vandalism?
There's a witness that said, I observed the defendant vandalizing the reflecting pool. Now, that's different than whether ultimately we had the proof, and you saw what U.S. Attorney Pirro said about that in her filings. And I said this before, we're talking about a single case, okay? We're talking about one case. We had another case of vandalism against a memorial earlier this week. This is horrible what's happening in our nation's capital with some of these really, really sick people vandalizing our national monuments. And U.S. Attorney Pirro is doing a phenomenal job of enforcing that, going after anybody who's doing it. And I think judging her on a single case because of the evidence that we had is not fair.
Should the president have a voice in individual prosecution decisions at all?
Every American has a voice in prosecutions. I mean, we hear from Americans all the time. As a matter of fact, many of our investigations start with an American citizen coming forward and saying they saw something. And so whether President Trump should have a, quote, voice, it depends.
Would you take his opinions into consideration when he says, I think this case should be revived? Will you take that into consideration?
Hold on. Will I take the President of the United States' view on something into consideration? Yes. Of course, and I hope every attorney general in history would not answer that question differently. Just let's play that out. The President of the United States, the elected President of the United States, says something to me, and I'm supposed to say to you, I would say, nope. I mean, that's not the way it works. Now, the President is extraordinarily, every day he wakes up with one mission, which is making this country better. And as it relates to me, making this country safer. So if he has a view on that, he talks about it on social media, he talks about it when he speaks to the American people. That's certainly something that I listen to.
I'm asking in part because we did see this clash play out in his first term. Bill Barr, the Attorney General during President Trump's first term, did push back against President Trump in 2020. As you recall, he told him his election claims were detached from reality. If you were faced with a similar situation, something that you did not think actually met the standard, the legal standard in your mind, would you stand up to the president?
I mean, so I will always stand up for what's right. And the president does not expect any of his leaders, including me, to just say yes to him no matter what he says. And so, of course, there's vigorous back and forth with every cabinet member in the president of the United States, which is exactly what President Trump expects. And there is this extraordinarily false narrative that the president wakes up in the morning and calls me and says, Todd, go prosecute X or Y. He does not do that. He has never done that. He will never do that. And so if there's something that he wants to do, but he needs to know that there's a challenge or that we can't do it, of course I will tell him It happens all the time with all of his leaders, and that's what he expects.
One of the issues that he really cares about, the midterms, and there's been a lot of focus on the midterms as it relates to the Justice Department, which has lost 22 cases trying to force states to turn over their voter rolls. State officials have pushed back against those moves. They say states dictate how elections are run, not...
So what do you guys think is going to happen with the midterms, honestly? Because this lady is about to ask Todd Blanche about the midterms. Do you guys think that the Democrats are going to flip and take control of the House and Senate? Or do you think Republicans are going to retain a majority?
A lot of focus on the midterms as it relates to the Justice Department, which has lost 22 cases trying to force states to turn over their voter rolls. State officials have pushed back against those moves. They say states dictate how elections are run, not the federal government. Is it time for the DOJ to drop this fight, and will you do it?
Well, we're relying on a statute passed by Congress that allows us, in the right circumstances, to review and get those voter rolls. And so, yes, no, we're not going to stop doing what I think every American should expect us to do, which is make sure that we have elections that are fair. And as that relates to the Department of Justice, that means making sure that there are no constitutional legal violations, even at the state level. So, yes, President Trump, this administration knows and of course understands that states administer elections, and that will always be the case, but it doesn't mean the federal government should play no role. And so the tension there is, of course, whether we should be playing the role that we're playing, and that's really what we're litigating.
How far are you willing to take this fight? Because you've been ruled against now 22 times. Are you going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court, do you anticipate?
We'll see. We'll see what happens. We're trying to work it out with states. Of course, yes, absolutely, it's a possibility. Election integrity is something that President Trump ran on, and the American people elected him. It's something that every American should care about. And so the idea that the Department of Justice is trying to investigate issues around elections to make sure they're fair and make sure they're conducted the right way is not something that we should be running away from. That's something we should be running right towards.
I want to finally shift gears here a little bit and ask you about an issue that is, full disclosure, close to us here at NBC, the kidnapping of Savannah Guthrie's beloved mom, Nancy. The FBI told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The state is the lead in this investigation, has always been the lead. Mr. Attorney General, she has been missing for more than 6 months now. Is it time for the FBI to take the lead in this investigation?"
It's a horrible situation. And
dude, I feel like these questions by these lady, isn't this like old stuff? Like, I don't know.
I share the grief and the frustration that you and your colleagues have, and that the whole country has in this situation. I mean, I think whether the FBI takes the lead, we are there to support and give. And President Trump pledged it. Director Patel pledged it. The resources, anything that investigation needs, we are working as hard as we can with the state and local law enforcement in every area, and that means not only providing assistance with manpower, but any sort of forensic assistance. And so we're going to continue to do that. Whether we come in with sharp elbows and take it over, that's not necessarily the right thing to do for her or for anybody. But making sure it's done right and making sure that this investigation is being conducted the way that it should be is something we're doing.
Is there an update? Are you any closer to solving this?
I don't have any update. I don't, and I'm sorry to say that because I wish I had an update. And I know that this type of case is heartbreaking, especially when it plays out nationally like this one has. And all I can say is that Director Patel and his leadership and the leadership out in that area of the country it will remain a priority, as it should, with resources and with energy and with focus, and we hope that we get something soon.
All right, Mr. Attorney.
Whoa, so that's powerful, guys. So there we have all the updates from Todd Blanche as the new Attorney General. So what do you guys think about Todd Blanche? You know, we have some amazing updates with the economy and with what President Trump's doing with our nation right now, and he actually just came out pretty recently to talk about all of these updates with the economy. Take a listen, guys.
Rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, this is a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. but it's going to go a lot higher. You see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion.
I actually did listen to President Trump, and I did start investing in the stock market. And over the past year, my investments are up over $90,000. If you want to learn how to invest in the stock market, very beginner friendly, step-by-step and easy, you can go to thefinancezone.org, or if you're watching this on your TV, you can just scan this QR code and get started in a couple of minutes. Even one of you guys messaged me saying that your investments are up over $13,000 after taking the program. And right now, we have a 90% off sale that ends today, up to $1,000 in bonus stocks inside the program. I go over which stocks that Trump has, which stocks that I'm buying, how to set up an account for the very first time, and I also go into depth about how to take advantage of this time we're in while Trump is still president. It's not too late.